All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Bitcoin Brief with your host, Vays. And I'm joined by Lex, Bitcoin Mechanic. Oh, man. How are you doing this morning? I know we didn't have much of a pre-show, but but you're like me, man, like watching what's going, like you can't even avoid the COVID news. And it's just like, what do you do? It's depressing as hell. Like, what can you do? I mean, I was in a run yesterday. It was bad.
Yeah, it's bad. It's so bad that it makes it uh I don't know. Like it's so bad that it becomes good. Like the only silver lining for me is that um things have been authoritarian anyway since 9/11, and I'm hoping this is just them going too far with it, and then we get to swing the pendulum back the other way and start pursuing freedom again and understanding that it's a noble and worthwhile goal. Because people are willing to trade essential things for convenience and security, or the illusion of security. They'll do that up to a point, I hope. And now they're going, why? Hopefully they're just going to say it's not worth it. It's not a worthwhile trade-off, and we can have another,
I just lost your audio. I don't know if that was me or not.
1 2. uh I'm still sending it. I didn't accidentally mute
Try
it.
to say something.
1 2 1 2.
Okay, I hear you. Let me go back to my other speaker. Say something else.
Yep. Hello everyone.
Okay, yep, I got you. So, okay, so I still don't know if it was me or not, but you're good now. All right, yeah. No, we're gonna get on with the stories. We're gonna talk about Elon first, but for me, it was this, and this is your home airport for the time being, still Vancouver, where they're now separating the vaccinated from the unvaccinated, kind of like cattle, the vaccinated and the unvaccinated.
Yeah, I mean, the dehumanization of the unvaxxed has started. We've had Boris Johnson saying we're going to make life as difficult as possible for the unvaxxed. Macron tried saying you're going to need passports to get into restaurants and things like that. Italy today just started with I don't know if they mandated it yet, but they're saying they're going to, or if they already have. I don't know. So yeah, like this was great. This thing you posted here, I really.
Yeah, I really want to. I want to switch it. I'm gonna have my graphic designer change it a little bit. I think number six is way too late in this hierarchy. I think number six should be either number two or number three, and then you slide the rest down.
Number six should be number 2 or 3.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean the propaganda began.
yeah. The propaganda starts first. The propaganda starts before the military rounds people up.
Hmm.
Like it's the propaganda that causes four. So six is just out of place. Yeah, six comes either after two or after three. What do you think?
I'd say it's the first one.
uh
Maybe,
no, I think acceptance. I think there was
no,
some.
so I
I'm
don't.
okay with number one. I'm okay with number one, right? Like the classification. Yeah, you're right. Six could even come first.
No, I didn't realize the second part. They start with the propaganda always, but the use of propaganda. I mean, the group is not defined till later on.
Right, 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 right. But yeah, but this is very close to how it goes. It just can be slightly altered.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a powerful thing. I hadn't looked at it this way. That's a really good summary of how things go.
Now, right now, it's mostly here, but I think Australia is starting this. I think Australia is ahead.
Australia is. I feel so bad for Rusty, man. Stefan Lara managed to get out, but you know, Rusty didn't. I really hope, you know, I hope he can get out somehow, and I hope he doesn't.
Ironically, I'm hearing the vaccination rate in Australia isn't very high, which is why it's happening. Israel, on the other hand, oh man, they're anyway. Okay,
Yeah,
let's stop. Let's talk about Elon.
yeah, all right. I mean, I wanted to say Israel. They have the highest vaccination rate in the world, but they're not including Palestinians, right? So they're probably about the same as everyone else, if not worse. So the data in this whole thing. Anyway, as you say, Elon.
Yeah, let's talk about Elon. All right. So did you survive watching this? It was about an hour.
Yeah, I watched it. I watched it on 2x speed and noted, made some notes. So I'm super organized on this one.
All right, perfect. All right. So, by the way, did you watch any other presentations?
Of Jack and
No. Oh, right. So it was a full
oh
day event.
No, I haven't watched anyone else yet. I know that Nick Carter will be good.
Nick Carter was great.
Yeah.
That was probably, I mean, I haven't seen them all yet, but from what I saw, Nick Carter's was excellent. And had Elon actually watched it, some of his responses might have been different. Lynn Alden had a really good one as well. I haven't seen the rest. I still need to watch the second half of this. But we're going to jump right into the Elon one, but I strongly recommend everyone watch, well, you can watch them all, but definitely Nick and Lynn. What's up?
Adam Back did one. I'd like to see that.
Yeah, I didn't get to that one yet, but I will get to that one as well. All right, so let's, I don't know if I want to play this, but what were your general thoughts on this panel and the people they selected for it?
Yeah.
I would have gone in a slightly different direction, but what do you think?
For this particular panel here or more generally?
Like for people to be on the panel with Elon, because neither Kathy nor Jack have a, I mean, did they understand Bitcoin? But it's between their like personalities and their like stature within the Bitcoin community. I mean, I didn't think they were the people. Like if you would put Michael Saylor there, or you put like an Adam Back there, you put someone there, or even like an Andreas Antonopoulos, that would force Elon to actually listen and pay attention to what they have to say and maybe actually change his mind with so many people watching.
Well, they come at it from a super respectful, in a super respectful capacity. They're trying to not be toxic, and Jack especially.
Oh, the people that I named are not toxic by any means.
I know.
I named some of the very nice people.
Yeah, I'm not saying that they are toxic. I'm just saying that Jack he's a CEO of a big in the spotlight company. Everything he says is dissected, so he has to make an extra effort to be squeaky clean, right, and agreeable. So no one's going to get too. I mean, I think Kathy did call out Elon maybe once or twice. Everything was done in the spirit of like, let's be well presented. Let's not get down and dirty with Elon's, with Elon's just poor understanding of this thing. No, they wanted to humor him as best as possible and just look presentable and respectable and not. I think there's an argument to be said that the more mature and more calm and rational you appear, the better. It's a net positive rather than confronting head on Elon being right, but making people go, oh, confrontation. I'm scared of that. It's a bit. Do you know what I mean? Like psychologically, I can see that though. I don't know. Like literally, if you're debating Elon, are you going to try and be respectful, or are you going to call him out on his bullshit?
Right. So let's talk about some of that bullshit, but we're going to try to be respectful. As I stated briefly in my last stream, I believe his knowledge of the Bitcoin network begins and ends with, I need to hold Bitcoin because it protects my money. I should not let others hold my private keys. I really think that's the extent of his knowledge. How did you see it?
Yeah, he's got a few things right. Like he doesn't get everything wrong. There's plenty of things where I'm like, yeah, he understands that. He even alludes to the state's monopoly on violence every now and again, and then comes across as a complete socialist at other times. So he seems kind of confused, if I'm honest. I think the overall, what I'd say that winds me up about it is Bitcoin is a moral project. It's not a technical project exactly. It's a technical means of doing something that we have a moral purpose for. And he always treats that as an afterthought. Like he kind of sees it and he alludes to it sometimes, but he always focuses on the technical stuff rather than the moral stuff. And then he gets the technical stuff wrong. So it's really frustrating that he has anyone's ear when it comes to this stuff, because he's not only does he get the technical stuff wrong, but he gets it wrong in the way that people like Roger Ver and Gavin Andresen got it wrong. He's a big blocker, but
it's worse than that, right? Like after he gets the technicals wrong, assuming the technicals were correct, it still takes him to the wrong conclusion.
What do you mean? Which conclusion?
Like, for example, his view was that like Bitcoin mining is bad for the environment, and that's why we shouldn't do it. Well, no, even if Bitcoin mining was as bad as he thought it was, it's still a good thing for the overall like population. Like we can still make the argument that even if 80% of Bitcoin was powered by coal, it's still better than the alternative situation we have.
Yeah, and this is really frustrating because
Right.
it needs to happen. And if the energy isn't perfect, you don't get to then go, oh yeah, this is a precise quote or a framing of the way he frames stuff. He's saying, yeah, Bitcoin's good, but it needs to be better. And I'm saying, no, it doesn't. It can be better if you define using more renewable energy as better, but it doesn't need to be. It doesn't. It's not on anyone else to move things around so that you're satisfied. It's just look, if you're starving, hungry, and someone gives you an okay meal, that's good enough. You're going to eat it. You're not going to sit there and go, as a planet, we need Bitcoin, and we don't get to sit here and go, yeah, it's okay. But I know it's when Tesla invested in Bitcoin, the hash rate went up so far that my conclusion was the only reason it could do that is by suddenly increasing its reliance on fossil fuels. That's not good enough, so we had to drop it. Like this is just it's the most entitled and pathetic attitude I can tell. Like I like Jack's perspective instead. Jack is saying, look, it's worth it. I like what you just said. It's worth it. Even if we did use non-renewables predominantly, it's worth it. It needs to happen. You don't get to complain about it. And you certainly don't get to present Dogecoin as some sort of alternative because he has this, I was going to go through it in order, but
yeah, go for it.
Yeah, like he has this romantic notion that the universe loves irony, and it would be ironic if Dogecoin became the de facto currency of the planet. And
that was so silly, man. That was like him as like, yeah, Occam's razor is the simplest explanation, is really the correct one. And then he's like, and I changed it. And my other crazy friend also changed it to the most ironic thing happens. I'm like, oh yeah, why don't you give one example of that actually affects the world? The most ironic thing one.
Well, it needs to actually technically be viable, which Dogecoin isn't. And
right.
And yes, if you had, I mean, that just speaks to his complete misunderstanding of the technology. So let's go back to the start of it, because what Elon does right at the beginning, right off the bat, is he takes what he perceives to be Bitcoin's weak area, which is its utility as a medium of exchange. And he compares it to all the other mediums of exchange. And this is what we learned in the block size war, which is that Bitcoin is a medium of exchange as a secondary purpose. It's not the primary purpose of it. And that's for a very good reason, because mediums of exchange are everywhere. They can be made at any time by anyone. My local farmer's market, on the way in, you have to buy a bunch of tokens, and that's to get around people using credit cards, buying loaves of bread and jam and whatever. That you wouldn't invest in that. It only has utility as a medium of exchange. Bitcoin caches are busy saying, this store accepts Bitcoin Cash, this accepts Bitcoin Cash. We can fit all of these transactions. Again, medium of exchange. Mediums of exchange are really, really trivial to create. There's millions of them. The hard thing to create is a store of value, and that's what Bitcoin does. And it can trivially add a medium of exchange on top of it afterwards, which is obviously what Lightning is and what all the layer 2 stuff is. But he starts his talk saying, he starts comparing it with ACH, clearinghouses. He's talking about traditional finance being slow. Credit cards are insecure because your private key is effectively public information, and the cost of all that stuff is externalized, the fraud that happens. And then he alludes to Lightning, saying maybe Bitcoin could be better than these things. But you're comparing mediums of exchanges to mediums of exchange. But who cares about PayPal? Who cares about Visa? Who cares about any payment network? Because Bitcoin is a store of value and a currency. Everything else he's talking about with PayPal and all these things, they're all payment networks. Who cares about payment networks? None of them are uncensorable. Bitcoin's is because it's decentralized. Case closed. That's the end of that discussion. You have something special in Bitcoin.
There's also one more thing on that is like no one talks about, like, you comparing Bitcoin to Visa, you're comparing Bitcoin to PayPal. Their job is to be a payment network. They're not compromising the actual currency with their payment network, right? Like their engineers are only focused on the payment network side. They don't have to worry about screwing up the underlying currency that they're trying to create a medium of exchange for.
Yeah, it's a good point. The Bitcoin that's the only thing I ever liked about Ethereum, which is you have the network that's called Ethereum and you have the token, which is called Ether. That's the only thing I wish was different in Bitcoin, where the actual name of the coins was different to the name of the network, because it creates confusion. Because people treat the whole thing as one entity, and you're like, well, no, there's the medium of exchange element of it, and then there's the actual network itself, and they're both called Bitcoin. And you can't compromise the Bitcoin network for the Bitcoin medium of exchange.
Well, we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there with Satoshi's denomination.
Good point.
Yeah.
Good point. We will get there with sats. So, I mean, the next point he goes on is Bitcoin solved for scarcity. He says that's supposed to be the focus of it. He does come back to that. The entire system cannot get coerced because of its decentralization. He's right about that. The transaction volume is low and the cost is high, and its usability sucks. That again is the entitled attitude that I think is just not appropriate. Yeah, Bitcoin. I mean, later on, I was going to come back to this, but later on he talks about if blocks can't be bigger, why can't they be smaller? And then he looks really proud of himself for a minute. It's super cringe. He's like, if you're not going to make them bigger, then make them smaller. And he sort of folds his arms and goes like, I got them. Like, but he doesn't understand the reality of a decentralized ecosystem. You can't just do stuff like that. And even the host of the thing calls him out and says there are actually people in the Bitcoin community that do want to make block size smaller, but
right.
they don't
and here's another one. Like, we can make blocks smaller. That's a soft fork. We cannot make blocks bigger. That's a hard fork. He needs to watch your video on the history of the fork wars or read the book. Have you read the book yet, by the way?
No, I haven't read it yet. It's called The Block Size War, right? BitMEX. Yeah, everyone that's read it says it's fantastic. So I need to read. So what he says, his argument for smaller blocks, he's saying is if smaller blocks are good, then you should be smaller than you are now. And then you can run a Bitcoin node on like a Commodore 64 or something ridiculous. And then he wraps all that up by saying, look, connectivity improves, decentralization won't hurt if you make blocks bigger, which is basically Reddit/BTC all over again. It's a wrong argument. It oversimplifies the problem that comes with having big blocks, and it assumes you can just make blocks bigger anyway, and that there was some entity that decided they shouldn't be, because he still doesn't understand decentralization. Big blockers come along and say, we should make blocks bigger, and I go, you did, and it was a fork, and now you have Bitcoin Cash, and it wasn't popular. That's the reality of making blocks bigger. It happened. It's called Bitcoin Cash, and it's done. The argument is settled. The market has decided. Elon, all of your ideas have happened. In reality, they didn't work. So stop trying to say Bitcoin needs bigger blocks, because Bitcoin has bigger blocks. It was a fork that no one likes. It's over. That's it.
Yeah, and when people talk to me and they say, Tone, let's have a debate on making blocks bigger, and I say, yes, let's have this debate on Mars. And when they say, well, we can't do that, I say, exactly. So which one do you think is more likely to happen? Our meeting on Mars or us making blocks bigger? And like, maybe that will help them. I mean, and it's like, well, I know you want to meet in the middle, so you and I can also meet in the middle. So pick a spot between Earth and Mars, and we can have a meeting there about it, because both of those things are more likely to happen. Us having a meeting in those locations than you getting big blocks, and that still doesn't get through them.
Yeah,
so I mean, it can't happen.
You're welcome to have your bigger blocks, but you're not going to, like, you may be able to conceivably get one person to Mars, but, you know, can you get the whole, I don't know. I don't want to continue with that analogy in case
I know.
Like, I get what you mean, and it's right, but it's just the idea of saying, make blocks bigger. Who are you talking to, Elon? If you want bigger blocks, then you can have them, but you need everyone to agree with you, and they don't. But he's a CEO, he's king of his world, and he thinks what he wants can actually happen. He's used to his decisions being carried out by other people. And I'm like, you still just don't understand the reality of Bitcoin. It's always back to language with the analogy. You can't just tell everyone, yeah, I don't like the word tree to describe that growing big plant over there. I'm going to call it concrete instead. and the world just says, well, who made you king of the English language? We're not going to do that. And you go, no, it has to happen. Stop blocking my innovation. And we're like, we're not forced to accept it. We're not changing language based on you, and you're not in control of it. So it's the same with Bitcoin. You don't just get to go, blocks should be bigger. And then when they're not, go, guys, stop ignoring me. Blocks should be bigger. I'm like, we're not ignoring you. We disagree. We're not going to do it. There's your big block version of Bitcoin. Go use it. No, I want real Bitcoin, but I want it to have bigger blocks. Okay, so what you're really saying is you want everyone in the Bitcoin community, or the vast majority of them, to actually hard fork and to do what Ethereum did and take the name with them this time and completely trounce all over any backward compatibility, anyone running old nodes. The whole inertia of the system is thrown out the window, and then you'll be happy, because that's just not going to happen. So I mean, that speaks to a lack of understanding of the architecture of the network, and just generally his understanding of computer science as well, which is why we keep making jokes at Elon about, when he says we're going to have Dogecoin with 100 times cheaper transactions than Bitcoin, 100 times bigger blocks, and everyone's like, yeah, we're going to make rockets 80 times larger. We're going to make them use a fifth of the kerosene or whatever the hydrogen. We're going to, because anyone can opine on stuff they don't understand. Tone, he's got me wondering, is rocket science really that hard? I'm like, it's Newton's third law, like you burn stuff and it goes that way, forcing the thing that's containing that to go the other way. Is it really that difficult? I don't know.
All right. Hey, so I have one more thing in my notes. You have others?
I've got loads more on this.
Oh, geez.
So yeah, I mean, it was so bad that I thought I'd better be organized and take notes.
I would love. There's one thing he said. He's like, we'll consider making a Tesla a node, a Bitcoin node, a Doge node, and an Ethereum node.
Yeah.
I would love for him to get his engineers to turn each Tesla into an Ethereum node. I would love to sit there for those meetings. In fact, I wish they would mark their stability, right? So if there is a problem with the Ethereum node, the Tesla doesn't move, because I'm willing to put that bet on a Bitcoin network, right? Like if the Bitcoin network goes down, every Tesla shuts down. I'll put a bounty on that. I would love it if you did that with Ethereum.
Yeah, I would love to see it. Please make an Ethereum node out of a Tesla. Like that would just be fantastic. So he gets worse in areas. He's talking about just proof of work being bad. And that's where you get in real dark territory, because proof of work, the alternative to proof of work is the incumbent system. It's the fiat system. Everyone watching this channel, I hope, knows the damage, the external damage that comes from a system like that. If you don't, please read Saifedean's book, The Bitcoin Standard, and understand why that system is just so bad. And proof of work is how everything gets made fair for everyone. And then he even makes it worse by saying, yeah, we have a payment network for Bitcoin that can alleviate some of what is directly required by proof of work, kind of. But there's some question about whether we need a license for Lightning Network routing.
Yep, that was the other part.
That is bootlicking. That was despicable. When he says stuff.
Yeah, but that's also an understanding of the technical side of Lightning. Misunderstanding, sorry. I'm not understanding.
I think he can push for that if he wants. It's the kind of thing where I can actually see governments being funny about Lightning, but it's completely unenforceable. Lightning is way more private by design than Bitcoin, because it can be. So even if they did go after it and say you need a money services license or whatever for running a Lightning node, good luck enforcing it. Like all the people that run it on Umbrella nodes and things like that do so by default over the Tor network. Like they haven't got a hope in hell. And Taproot means that we don't even, in most cases, when channels are closed, you don't even know it was a Lightning channel in the first place. So good luck enforcing that. That's why I'm so glad Taproot came and why I was so frantic to get it in. That's one of the main reasons for it. So then he goes on to say, I own Ethereum and Doge, which just boggles my mind. I mean, you've done Crypto Scam episode on Ethereum, right?
I did 3 of them, yeah.
Yeah. So Ethereum is it's investing in like a bunch of lies and silliness, and it's fiat all over again, but we don't need to do that. He says exchanges can be a de facto second layer that is a means of scaling, That's not what scaling is. Go back to computer science class and learn the definition of scaling. Outsourcing your problems is not the same as scaling. It's something you resort to because you can't scale, which is exactly a description of most of crypto. You can't scale Ethereum. So in an actual fact, most people do just leave their ether on centralized platforms. And I mean, not the centralized platform Ethereum, but the centralized exchanges that use it. Like, I mean, ridiculous again. He says, yeah, then he says of this stuff about if scaling up doesn't make sense, why not scale down? And then looks really smug, like he's just made the whole Bitcoin network feel stupid when we all just face palmed. Yeah, and I'm one of the people that does want to scale down, but I'm not about to do it and create a bunch of drama because it's me and Luke and Shinobi and maybe, maybe at best 500-600 other people in the world want to scale it down as far as I know. And that's not enough to justify. We need actual consensus. So that's why we're not doing that, Elon, even though it might be a good idea. This is the next part that really blew my mind, where he says the parameters were set in 2008 and they need to update. And first off, he doesn't realize the block size wasn't initially limited. So the parameter he's complaining about within this comment was not actually present in 2008. Initially, Satoshi was, as far as we know, a big blocker. He said, we don't care. Ultimately, the solution with Bitcoin is to not care how big blocks get. That was wrong. He ended up in July 2010 imposing the 1 megabyte block limit. And it's a bit unclear why he did that. It was supposed to be a denial of service, to stop a denial of service attack. But it's very lucky that he did. If he did it because he had the foresight to know we actually did need to limit block size, then that's great. If he didn't, then we got lucky. But either way, what Elon says, the parameters being set at the beginning and never changing is wrong on two levels, because first off, Bitcoin upgrades via soft fork all the time anyway. And second off, the parameter he's complaining about wasn't set in 2008. So a bit of history should be done there. And just generally, he needs to understand that we do upgrade. We just upgraded with Schnorr-Sigs and Taproot. Then he goes on saying, well, as connectivity improves, decentralization won't suffer. That's wrong, because he's only talking about download speed. He's not talking about verification. He's not talking about the possible advantages to larger mining pools, all of these subtle trade-offs you make when you have bigger blocks. Then he talks about mining Bitcoin using space heaters, which is like, wow, smoke another joint. Dogecoin is chill, like who cares?
I know we can rave about this all
right, let's leave
day. Let's move on from this topic as we are joined by a special guest. We have Untapped Growth joining us. Hey buddy, how are you?
What's up, Tony?
Excellent.
Doing pretty good, man. I'm pretty run out and tired. I've been in the trenches pretty hard the last week.
Any chance you can put your phone sideways in front of you? Perfect. There you go.
Better?
All right. Nice beard, man. I have mine. They get so like itchy. I can't do it. I had a big beard for a little while, but I couldn't do it. Joel, thank you for joining us on the channel. Where are you?
I'm in a truck. I've been scrambling, man. Like the whole last week or two, I've had that web woven around me. I've been in the trenches working my ass off. I've slept probably 7 hours over the last 4 days. I had to get a pitch deck in front of like a group of guys that probably have a couple billion AUM, that a guy in my network wanted to open some doors for me. And in the meantime, I had that entire public thing going down and nobody could do it but me. So I was cranking the handle as hard as I can. That's why the beard's all crazy. I survived. I'm here.
What state are you in?
I'm in Virginia.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. All right. So you're on East Coast time. Perfect. Hey, just do a quick intro for us real quick. You were all over Twitter this week over an incident. I was gonna mention it. And I'm like, hey, why don't I just text him, see if he wants to jump on. Joel, give us a really quick background on you. My audience may not be very familiar with you.
Okay. So I run the Twitter group or Twitter handle Untapped Growth. My thing in the Bitcoin community is I'm taking the base layer of Bitcoin where we now have hard money and I'm leading forward into the hyper Bitcoin future. So Bitcoin is going to change the world in a lot of drastic ways. And we're going to have the emergence of the new Citadel culture in kind of the thesis of the sovereign individual, right? Where it disempowers the nation state and empowers the individual. So what I'm trying to do is you've got your three foundations of sovereignty. You got sovereign money, sovereign energy, and then sovereignty over your food. Sovereign money is taken care of with Bitcoin, right? A lot of people are working with stranded energy resources and stuff, which integrates into Bitcoins. That's all moved forward well. Nobody was talking about food. We have a lot of issues in our food system. I mean, we've got centralization of the meat processors, like JBS just went down with the cyber attack. We've got an entirely misincentivized system that causes all sorts of chaos and like systemic fragility. But above all else, we have a soil erosion problem. Like one of my favorite books is called Dirt, The Erosion of Civilizations by David Montgomery. He talks about how societies, they rise and fall with how they treat their soil. It's a manifestation of their time preference. So it's kind of like with central banking, you know, we're stealing from the future. Soil's the historic way that's been done. It's your first productive asset. It's how you feed yourself. And then from that, all human productivity flows to create everything else needed to keep an economy running, right? So societies that invested in their soil fertility thrive for generation upon generation. A society that steals from their soil fertility collapses typically within a generation or two, because that's the base layer for the health of your people, which is the base layer of everything that society can accomplish. We've been destroying our soil in the US for a long, long time. We had that incredible inheritance of the 10 or 15 feet of topsoil in the Great Plains due to the Native American management of the buffalo herds. And with our industrial farming practices and a lot of the other details that we can get into later when it's not just an intro, we've pretty much destroyed all the topsoil to where there's nothing left.
Sounds like we need to do like a full proper show on everything. You and I are gonna cross paths in the very near future in person.
Yep.
And we will definitely do a show together. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. So to tie that off simply, we don't have topsoil left. Our entire food chain is systemically fragile and dependent upon the chemical inputs of fertilizers and pesticides and all these things. If you plant crops in most of our soils in the US without those inputs, you won't grow anything. It's bad enough that it's a systemic risk to like actual like famine and just lack of food supply. So my thing is regenerative agriculture. It is possible to rebuild soil. You follow the same model of like the bison in the Great Plains. You have densely packed groups of ruminants grazing intensively and non-selectively, moving and resting it for long periods of time. That rebuilds the carbon layer in the soil and brings the soil back to life, because the ruminant gut's kind of like an inoculant for the biological layer of the soil. So if we're trying to be sovereign, we need to get control of our food supplies again, and that starts in the soil. So what my thing is I do matchmaking between people who want to have land investments and young people who want to get out and steward the land, doing homesteading, regenerative agriculture, because the industry is so broken with land being used as a store of value that it's monetized to the point that, just like gold, the productive use cases are priced out. You can't use land as a farmer anymore because the farmers can't carry the mortgage costs of the land out of their operating budgets in the farm. So Greg Judy a while back came up with this model where he went and knocked on the doors of a bunch of wealthy people who had hunting and recreational properties out in Missouri. Greg Judy's a guy, he was a traditional rancher, pretty much went broke and just about lost his shirt. It's like, man, there's got to be a better way. And so he started from the ground up to rebuild the model of how cattle grazing works. And he knocked on their doors and was like, hey, I know how to do regenerative agriculture. Let me graze your property and I'll make the place look beautiful. You won't have to come out here with a tractor to take care of it anymore. The wildlife and the ecosystem is going to improve. You're going to see a lot more diversity of plants and even animals. The deer population will get stronger. The turkey population will get stronger. The hunting will be better. Because when you manage and steward the land well and the soil quality comes up, the quality of everything else goes up through the entire chain of the ecosystem. And so he was like, the one deal is give me the land at a no cost lease. Like, give me $1 a year for all these properties where we just signed a contract. And he signed the contracts, did it for a few years. The guys were so happy with him, they tore up the contracts and gave him lifetime leases for as long as he wanted to be there. So that's kind of how the low cost lease model of regenerative agriculture got started. My project takes that and advances it to kind of a next step, where rather than just trying to find people who have philosophical alignment where we're comfortable leasing from each other. I'm saying there's an investment thesis for this. We can start this from zero and it actually makes sense. So there's aligned incentives to actually boot up these emergent citadels where we start with farms rebuilding the soil that'll eventually grow into communities where we could do things like agritourism with little mobile home pads, because a lot of Bitcoiners want to be mobile now until they want to decide what state they want to be in, right? And these places will become the emergent places where the citadel world starts to be born. So that's kind of who I am. I'm trying to emerge the new world, facilitate it, provide as much leverage and covering for it with my skills that I have available to me. And that's the best introduction I could give you at a short time slot, buddy.
And if all works out, all three of us are in a group with a few other people working on one of these things. So if all works out, maybe next year, we're going to announce one of these Bitcoin citadels with some proper agriculture in place, or cattle, mostly.
I'm looking forward to it, man. They've got some cool cattle down there at the one we're looking at.
Yeah. All right, guys. Yeah. I'm just going to tease it for a while. No one knows where it is yet, but it's going to, got some big announcements probably coming next year. All right. Hey, so you've been in the news. I'm going to go back to screen share where, like, I sometimes I get very frustrated with the anarcho-capitalist community, with the libertarian community, is that it's hard for me to trust their word. And a lot of people in the libertarian community always end up getting scammed because they're so trusty. I find, that's one of the things. Like this entire show, my entire everything I've done in the crypto space is based on my reputation. I don't like signing contracts. I don't like signing my name to things. I'd like to just have my name and reputation staked on what I do. And that's how I like working with people. And that's how you like working with people. And you ran into a little bit of an issue and you wrote an article about it. Guys, please check out Untapped Growth's Twitter. You can read this article. It's right here. I like Untapped Growth, buy into my fund. So this was...
I like Bitcoin, buy my shitcoin.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if you want to give a brief synopsis on what happened, but let's talk about, what kind of support you're getting for this.
Yeah, so I've not had time to get away from this to sit down with my legal counsel or what I should talk about or what I shouldn't. This literally just happened. It's still all shaking out.
Right, but just a recap of the article.
What I'll say really simply is that I had a web woven around me where my entire project was being put at risk by bad faith behavior. But it was done in such a way where it was very, very difficult to expose it. And it fractured my entire core team. And it took me a little while to get it to a point where I could do something about it. And at the end of the day, the only leverage I had was the fact that I've lived in the Bitcoin community for a long time with integrity and always told the truth. So what I decided to do with this situation where everything was so fuzzy was just tell the story of the truth the best that I could and trust the plebs that their heart for truth and integrity would dig until they found it and that they'd see through the web that'd been woven around me and help me get free of it. That way I could get back to building again versus having to deal with all the noise.
Yeah, the pleb term is new. And can we define the term pleb? Because it's like new. Like how many, it's like there's Bitcoin OGs, and then the plebs is like the next class of Bitcoiners. So what happens to Bitcoin OGs like myself? Like, it's very confusing to some of us.
Yeah, so pleb is rooted back in some Greek terminology. The way I think about it, I don't know the Greek terminology well, so I won't even talk about it. But the way I think about it is kind of like very similar to like the Spartan ethos back in the day of like, I'm but a peer. We're all equal men who have to stand in the phalanx together. We sweat, we bleed, we live upon our integrity and reputation where we're salt of the earth, grounding our things in what we're doing, where we depend on one another. And the pleb ethos is very strongly based upon adding value to the world in whatever way you can. It's like there's no hierarchy in it of credentialism. It doesn't matter whether you're some farmer, you're some guy out stacking stones, or like you're some CEO running a global corporation. It's this ethos that bonds us together of let's with humility pursue truth of adding value together to the world. It's like the idea of anti-LARPing, anti-rent seeking, of just living with authenticity would be what I'd name it. And it's an attitude that is kind of becoming really core to some of the central Bitcoin community, that this is something we need to have. Had you not come across that term much before, Tony?
You know, I've come across this term very recently, quite often, but I was never sure of its definition.
Gotcha. Yeah, there's some guys who've written some good pieces about it. I'll try to look those up later and send them to you.
Yeah, because people are asking, well, like, again, it's a definition of like Bitcoin OGs versus plebs, right? So someone just wrote, you remain an OG, we can't reach that level, so we're plebs. So a lot of people have the same view as myself, like you're kind of new in the Bitcoin space, but my definition of a Bitcoin OG is different. For me, a Bitcoin OG is someone that has spent more than half the lifespan of Bitcoin in the Bitcoin space and positively in the Bitcoin space, more than half its lifetime, minus the time spent shitcoining. So Roger Ver is having like it's like 3 years minus from his time in the Bitcoin space. Lex is laughing.
Yeah, I think that for me, the Venn diagram between plebs and OGs overlaps. They are different things, but they definitely are.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think like plebism is almost, I don't know which one's the higher value. The pleb, like, because you can be, I feel like American HODL and people like that haven't been in for that long, right? But they have the mentality it's supposed to have, right? But then there's just complete, there's complete sellouts that have been here for, like you say, 8 or 9 years. But I mean, if you redefine OG to contain plebism, then, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I've not been here that long. I found Bitcoin in 2019, but it's just that nature of the authenticity. It's when you stand together with truth, you become a part of the family, family that bleeds together when any one of us need each other.
Yeah, and that's the important part, because that's where the lack of compromise comes from. That's why you have people like Jack Mallers who are like, fuck Elon, and Max Kaiser who's like, fuck Elon. And that's the attitude to have, and it's the one I appreciate. I love Michael Saylor, but I don't appreciate the appeasement attitude. I don't appreciate trying to say, oh, we're not liked for whatever reason. Okay, well, we can maybe change this. We can provide you with some. I don't like that attitude because it's not authentic. Like, the truth is, I will mine Bitcoin with whatever energy I can get my hands on. I'm not really serious if I would ever make the claim that it's renewable and clean, and it's not actually an actual integral part of Bitcoin. Energy consumption is going to happen, and we're going to do it with whatever we can get our hands on. That's the truth. And if we pretend otherwise, we're just kicking the can down the road and Trojan horse theory and all that stuff, but it's not authentic.
Yeah, I keep coming back to this idea that everything is mining Bitcoin. Like we talk about like fiat mining, where I'm at my day job kind of thing. Like in Bitcoin, whenever we add value to the network by producing value in our lives and saving it in Bitcoin, like that is a form of it's an input of energy. It's an input of human energy, not electrical energy, of creativity or wisdom or skill or whatever, right? That over time is growing the value of the network as a whole. And that's how hard money works, right?
Yeah. I mean,
and I just keep coming back to this. Go ahead.
Me and Tone, Tone messaged in the group that we were going to at least talk about this happy sizing of inflation that AOC and Joe Biden.
Yeah, you want to stick around for that. We can jump onto that topic.
That was unreal, man. Like, I mean, yeah. Joe Biden. I tweeted, "Is this real?" Because he spends a minute just falling.
I just want to play this real quick for you guys. Let me see where the audio is going to come from. Live chat, let us know if you hear anything. Same thing with you, Lex, and Untapped, bro.
Yeah.
Okay, so no sound there.
If you send me the link, I can play it. My audio.
In fact, are going to be reinvesting that money back in all the things we're talking about, driving down prices, not raising prices. And so it is. I sincerely mean this. Prices are up now, and they're up. For example, you're in a position where you're trying to build a house, try to find 2x4s and lumber. Well, guess what? People stop working cutting lumber. They stopped doing it because the unemployment was so down. Now all of a sudden there's this need because people are coming back, and guess what? Instead of paying 10 cents, you're paying 20. You understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
It relates to what, in fact, is now needed because we're growing.
All right, hold on one second, guys. I gotta flip audio real quick because I am doing two things now. Okay. I actually checked lumber prices. So lumber is only up 10% as of this past Monday from where it was right before the pandemic hit. And it had an unreasonable rise. But in general, I love it how Joe was like, well, no one was working in the lumber industry. I wonder why.
He almost says because unemployment was so, and then he stops. He doesn't finish that sentence. What was the last word?
Right. What was the reason for that high unemployment? Because you shut down the world.
And you paid people as well. You gave them.
You paid people not to work. I mean, this is the insanity of it. Do we want to hear more insanity? Let's hear from AOC, another gem of the Democratic Party.
Sure, you saw what happened with the stock market. They said it was because of COVID. There was lots of talk about inflation. So I want to talk about the fears of inflation. President Biden pushed back, assuring Americans that the price increases that they've seen hitting their wallets are temporary. Now, last week you questioned the Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell and expressed concern over prematurely raising rates and what that could mean for marginalized communities. What are your biggest concerns over inflation?
Well, here's the deal with inflation is that if we do not get the root cause
I'm not sure you guys can hear.
Right, then policy decisions could be made that could really negatively impact your life, boost unemployment, and again, increase interest rates. And we do not want that. So it's really important that we get the diagnosis right into what's going into these price increases. When you look at what actual prices are going up, it's in very specific sectors.
Anyway, I'm not sure if you guys can hear that, but you can follow along. Also, these links are in the video description. I don't want to spend too much time playing that stuff, so you put the audio back. They just want to admit that the reason why this is all happening is because they're printing money and because they're paying people not to work, and they're doubling down on those policies. How insane is it?
And she's saying the reason is she's blaming it on infrastructure, saying there's not enough ports for us to bring.
Which is also insane.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's ignoring the elephant in the room, which is you're printing trillions of dollars, and everyone is rushing, for the exit. And you're saying we need to build a few more ports, and that will get rid of the supply chain issues, and everything will get cheaper again. No, I mean, you have to, when prices go up, you ask yourself, did the good become more scarce or did the money become worth less? Those are the only two options. And it's obviously the fact that the money has become worth less, even to the point where I can believe that the boat stuck in the Suez Canal was deliberate just to try and justify the narrative of we have supply chain issues right now, because as far as I can tell, there actually aren't. You can get all the same plastic garbage you used to get. Yes, prices of it have gone up, but it could be two things at once. But there's no way the value of the dollar is what it was before all this reckless money printing. No way.
Can I tie this back to proof of work?
Yeah,
Please.
So money printing, right? It's trying to add value to the network, meaning network defined of everybody holds that money without expending any energy. Proof of work is all the energy that got expended is added to the network to be shared by all. So when you try to add value without expending energy, you drive everybody else's shared store energy value down. When you add energy to the network, you drive everybody's stored energy value up. Now, like stored energy, like you think about proof of work, it's not just electrical energy going into a network. Like it's a hard money standard of proof of work too. Like it's the thesis that's defined the value of all money in history. Like if you go back to something really simple, like you think about like salt being used as currency, like salt had value because of the effort and energy it took to mine it. And then its value would drift some based upon how far away you were from a location that had salt. So it also had stored in the energy it took to transport it. It had that scarcity value, but it also is connected to the energy of transportation.
Mhm.
Or like you go to a more mature form of money, like say cattle, right? Cattle, you've got the storage of all the sun energy captured by the grass photosynthesizing to make the protein and carbohydrates and fats that the cow needs when it grazes it. And it's got all the energy of the cow putting in the work to do the grazing and grow to have the food and the milk to feed people. It's got all the management time spent to take care of the cows. It's got all the wisdom of every person who managed this herd in it, of all the breeding and choosing generations of which bloodlines you like. All of these things are storage of energy. So the cows that had the most storage of energy in them, not just measured in how fat they are and how much grass they've eaten, but measured in quality of genetics of wisdom and time and effort and love put into these animals, are the animals that carry the most value. So you flip this all the way forward to the Bitcoin network. Bitcoin is finally money that synthesizes energy and value. And it's going to lead us to a world where it's kind of a pleb ethos, where we work together with all the wisdom, creativity, and work ethic we can muster to add our life force of energy to the network together where we all benefit. It's like the epitome of individualism benefiting the collective because it's tied to using energy to benefit yourself, but it benefits others versus trying to create value without any energy input at all.
Dude, that was so well stated. You sure you haven't been in the crypto space since 2009 and just came out in 2019?
I have an economics degree, but I didn't get along in school, and I argued against everything. I was at a closet Austrian economics that I didn't know yet. I was like, I finally felt like I got set free when I discovered you guys, and everything finally became clear, man. I got so hungry and just tore into everything I could learn.
Awesome. Hey, hope our shows with like Jimmy Song back in the day help.
I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, man. You guys have done such a good job as a community building the education system now to where we get up to speed so quickly when we find Bitcoin.
That's relieving to hear, man, because there's disinformation everywhere. Like Kayleen, I think her name is, talking about how all the shitcoiners are always muddying the water. I mean, you've got Elon Musk spreading FUD now. Like it can be annoying, and there's financial incentive for people to muddy the waters. So it's really a relief that what you say is true, that there is the information out there and people can actually separate the signal from the noise. The signal is there and it's loud and proud. I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah, I'd like to roll that back to what Tone and I were talking about just a little while ago about me trusting the plebs. So if you look at fiat world, right, it's the art of the pander. It's the art of smoozing up to those that are closest to the control of the cantillon effects, right? It's always having these political machinations of like trying to find a way to leverage manipulating people in order to win more access to the control of the money flow. And it incentivizes this world that's dishonest and just messy, right? And we see that as Bitcoin's emerging because you have that messy idea of trying to control the money flow, constantly trying to subvert us with all its deception and lies, right? And that's what all that noise is. But what I'm seeing in the grassroots, on the ground Bitcoin community is all sorts of craftsmen, tradesmen, farmers. Everybody's starting to fall in love with this because we're people who are trying just to do our simple work in the world and want our value to be preserved, right? To add it to the world safely together. Mm-hmm. And these people on the ground seem to have an incredible uptake speed of not getting distracted by all that noise because they've been subjected to all those costs of that system without understanding what was really happening yet. And once these guys on the ground see it, it just clicks. And so there's a really strong groundswell of this intransigent minority of plebs that is really not that visible to the guys who have been in the space that long. And it's hugely among the salt of the earth. which to me is exactly how this should be. So
Oh,
like,
preach.
back to my story of what happened this last week. So back to my story, what happened this last week with the fiat world being about always politicking. We're always trying to like get a leg up on each other is the norm of business out there, like that world, right? It's always about kind of the suits and legal gotchas and always being careful not to leave a vulnerability that somebody could exploit legally against you. And Bitcoin world is going to change all that. Like when the pleb world becomes real and Bitcoin hyper Bitcoinizes, credentials aren't going to be worth much. It's a world that's not going to be based upon permissions of who has access to the flow. It's going to be a world that's based upon who has the best creativity, wisdom, and work ethic to add value. What's going to matter is reputation. Reputation is going to be king. That will be the gold of the new world. It'll be solid reputation networks of brothers and families is what will open doors to opportunities now. I don't think people have grasped what that really means. Like what happened to me yesterday is a perfect example of that, where like I had this web woven all around me of all this noise that was just pinning me down. And I came with integrity and authenticity. I told the story to the plebs. They sought the truth, sniffed it out. And all the little systems that were trying to pin me down based upon that old world view of like the suits and the fiat mindset just got completely obliterated. Like the suits have forgotten that the economy doesn't just run on contracts. It runs on trust. You can spend all the energy in the world you want making a perfect contract, but at the end of the day, that's not what makes collaboration happen.
Yeah.
The flow of the wiring or the piping of the economy, it's the resistance is just dictated by how much do you trust each other. That's where the bandwidth lies. And that's the underlying foundation of everything. And if you don't live with integrity and truth, that first principle is going to bite you because the truth always gets found out.
It's such a good point, man. Like the contracts are just 90% of the time not worth the paper they're written on because they are useless in so many senses, and there's such a false sense of security. It can't be used in lieu of sussing out someone when you shake their hand and knowing, are you going to screw me over or not? A contract ain't going to help you if they do. It's going to mean a lawyer makes a lot of money. That's it.
Yeah, and the important thing too is that not only are contracts largely not useful, but like you can be contractually and legally perfect. And in a pleb world that's no longer based upon credentialism to get close to the money flow, that's based upon value creation of collaboration together, it doesn't matter whatsoever because they're looking for integrity. You can be totally perfect on everything you do legally, but if you're bad faith and disrespect the community that you're a part of, you're going to get burned. That's the new world. It's a totally different game. It levels the playing field where the pleb farmers, tradesmen, plumbers, like electricians, carpenters are like, we have the power again because we together stand to seek out the truth of who has integrity. And that reputation is developed over long periods of time, a proof of work again.
Mm-hmm.
That's an emergent world that I don't think anybody understands how much it's going to change. Because we're moving away from the state-based power system with a monopoly on violence that enforces the legal structures anyway. This is going to be more of a free market system based upon integrity. That is everything. It is absolutely everything. And it's going to change the world.
I hope so, man. And I hope
No, that is very well said. All right, man. Joel, I know you're tired. You need some sleep. I was going to...
Absolutely.
We'll have you on another show. It sounds like we may have another person to join us on these news shows. I'm sure you keep I don't know how much time you have keeping up with the Bitcoin news, but your perspective and your economics background and your understanding of the whole food supply would be really well, and supply chains as well, obviously, and understanding of Bitcoin would be a huge asset on this channel. To have you on more often. Sounds great.
I'd love to chat when I can, man. I'm trying to spend as much of my time as I can building because we need this world to emerge as it's getting crazier. But I'm happy to do what I can.
Are you attending any Bitcoin events in the near future?
Last one I attended was in Miami, Bitcoin 2021.
What's next on your schedule? What's next on your calendar?
next on the schedule currently is, now that I'm out of the chaos of the last situation that's been burning my time, is to dig in and start getting everything actually finalized. That way I could get the plebs in their citadels growing food and changing the world.
Okay, gotcha. So nothing on the calendar yet. No, because the two big events coming up are BitBlock Boom in Dallas at the end of August, and right before that, Lex and I will be down in Ensenada for Ugly Old Goats Bitcoin Standard Conf.
Yeah, my passport got out of date, and I've not had time to get it to date. I want to go to BitBlock Boom, but I didn't get a ticket in time. Do you know if there's still a way to get one?
We'll find out for you.
Man, get a passport.
Awesome.
Before you need to prove vaccination status before they will allow you a regular passport, because that they require that.
Oh man,
yeah, that would be interesting, right? If you can, will they eliminate the regular passport for a COVID passport? That's
we'll just make
we'll just be both in one. Yeah.
I'm not
right. I'm
going
sure
to do it. Sorry.
I'm sure we have similar views on this whole vaccine situation as well, Jill.
Yeah. Absolutely. If we care about sovereignty, what is possibly more sovereign than your own body?
Yes.
It's like, who has the right to make decisions over the things that you have control over? Is the state your god, or are you the king over your domain?
I'm going to say that there aren't any vaccinated plebs. I think you lose pleb status if you're vaccinated. Like, maybe I'm being harsh, but
with the level of information out there of what's really going on here, I agree with you. Because if you fall for this one, it's like, what won't you fall for of the pressure of the government trying to bully you into doing something?
Yeah, and if you add in the whole, like, I think it's a shitty vaccine, whatever, I want my convenience back. That, to me, is possibly worse, and a lot of people are doing that too.
Yeah, man,
yep.
I want to say something.
It's a capitulation.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say
plebs don't capitulate. That's against the ethos.
You don't negotiate with terrorists.
Yeah.
Bingo.
Man, I want to say something real quick. I'm like trying to find somebody's tweet real quick, but I have so much on my timeline. But yeah, you might be being a little bit harsh on that one, only because I know so many people that got vaccinated for the sole purpose of having travel ability. And this is what is kind of challenging, right? Because if you're vaccinating just to, comply, knowing that it's wrong, what does that say, right? And then you're in a situation where, what if you have the ability to get into the government database that you've been vaccinated without actually vaccinating? Is that a good thing either? Because now, once again, you're showing your compliance. And now the government thinks that, yes, 90% of all our people have complied, or 100% they have the vaccine, even if 30% of that is fake compliance. They see that as, well, now we can enforce more shit because look how much they did not resist to the last one. So it becomes this like really big of a dilemma. Like, I think the best way is to not comply and to speak out against it, even though it could lead to not having privileges. And the tweet that I was looking for was in the British Parliament. Someone said that if you've been injected with a placebo instead of a virus, you still count as vaccinated. This actually was said in the British Parliament. But I'm trying to find the tweet where they said
that's them trying to actually have some scientific credibility, because you can't do what they're doing and not have a control group. And I mean, they basically messed that up already anyway, but you can't vaccinate everyone and not have a control or a placebo even, because.
But here's the thing, but if they don't know, but how are they doing it on a mass scale without volunteers, right? So do they write down this guy was vaccinated, but with a placebo, and that's how it stays in a government database? So you're not actually vaccinated, but the government knows you're not vaccinated, but you don't?
I don't know. Maybe that's a scheme by where the privileged people can say, look, can you give my son the placebo, please? I want him to have all the same rights. You can create an class.
There you go. I want my daughter to have kids in the future, so therefore, let's make sure she gets the placebo.
Yep. I mean,
and this has been one of the points
Joel,
of some of the
anti-autism
people. You lost my audio.
No, we got you.
I think
Tom's in.
Okay.
Not sure why. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Back?
Cool. Yeah. So this is some of the points some of the people with the autism world is so concerned about, where they have used this idea that it's unethical to not vaccinate people, to not do studies on vaccines. So all the vaccine schedules pretty much had this dilemma you guys are talking about, where none of them have actually had a true randomized study done.
No, I lost the audio now.
All right. Joe, we are gonna let you go unless you want to stick around for the price of Bitcoin talk. But just before you go, I'm gonna pull up your Twitter handle one more time for the people to see it. This was Joe, also known as Untapped Growth, joining us on this show. And thanks for hanging out. Please check out his article that he published recently on his website and tweeted it. It's also, everything is in the video description. Joe, thanks a lot for coming on. Feel free to stick around for a price of discussion and closing thoughts.
Pleasure, guys. I'm gonna go hit the sack and get some sleep.
Perfect. All right, man.
Thanks for having me on, Tone.
Yep.
I'm gonna
Later.
bounce as well, Tone.
All right. The mempool's been fairly empty, so 1 cent per byte transactions are back. Man, Lex, that was cool having him on. Very impressed. I'm very impressed.
No, I like the guy. He's got a lot of integrity. I'd love to hear more of what he's got to say. His knowledge of agriculture is super necessary. Let's get him back on, man.
All right, so price of Bitcoin, people are panicking again because the price of Bitcoin fell this morning after making a new swing high. So let's go and take a look. Here's the weekly chart. As I've stated yesterday, speaking to guys like that makes me, a little happier that the future may potentially be a little bit brighter than what's happening these days. So we still have a bullish candle, but that's pretty much where my bullishness ends. Other than this weekly candle being bullish, with today being Friday, that's the only bullish thing about it, because the MRI is still showing you bearishness. Moving averages overall still showing you bearishness, while the 50-period weekly moving average is rising. Our current candle is below it. The body of that candle is fully below that moving average, with the other moving averages falling. Of course, the lucid SARs are there. We are in between two Fibonacci lines, which means that we are more likely to hit the next Fibonacci line all the way down at $27,250. Let's move on to the daily chart. The daily chart bounced beautifully on the MRI, which is great. However, I almost took this triangle away in the last video, but then I zoomed out a little bit, took a look at it, decided to keep it on. And keeping the triangle on, we almost hit the top of the triangle earlier today. And that is not good. If this candle closes as a bearish candle, with tomorrow being a bit of a down day, if the price of Bitcoin gets back to $31,500, this is still fully on the table. This, to me, this was basically a bit of an early breakdown that did not coincide with the MRI, which is why it was a little bit problematic to me. I like to have a bunch of ducks in a row before considering a trade. And when the triangle breakdown happens, yes, that is a bearish trade, because the triangle breakdown is more important than the MRI. But the MRI puts a hold on my expectation. Now, if this triangle had broken down a little bit earlier and the crash had taken us all the way down to 25,000, everything would have been in line. The triangle target would have hit and the MRI would have hit, and then I would have been bullish from that day forward. But because we did not fall all that much and we did not even break the low of early June, I saw this MRI buy as a 1 to 4 candle correction to the upside, followed by potentially significantly more downside. And we're about to find out which way that's going to go. If this triangle, one more piece of good news. If we come back to 31,500, yes, the probability of a crash is high, but I can also then lower my bullish bullish area for entries and bullishness down to 33,200 instead of where it currently sits at 34,000. So that's the only possible, good news. We're going to have another depth cross between the 128 and the 200-day moving averages in a day or two. That is not going to be avoided by any means. And therefore, it's a little bit of a concern. I could also slide my entry target down because here's the other problem. If we break down from under the triangle, I would now expect us to go noticeably lower on the closing basis than what happened a few days ago, which means that we're probably going to swing lower than I initially would have allowed to call a bottom than the June lows. So we're definitely not out of the woods. As long as we're in this triangle, you should stay very diligent and a little bit concerned. Hourly chart, not that interesting. That's sorry, the 4-hour chart, not that interesting. Hourly chart, not that interesting, but certainly leaning bearish. I'm just going to glance at the traditional markets real fast. Oh, look at that. So GBTC is still up because the premium is rising. That's a good sign. I would love to see this premium going back above zero, and that kicks off the bull market in Bitcoin once again. Bitcoin dominance, not interesting. Gold is hanging in there, but it just made another new low. I think this gold low is going to play out. Let's stay above the support line, and then gold can still recover. And I still think new all-time highs for gold for the end of the year is possible. Oil is rebounding back to the upside. I am now back to being bullish oil. S&P 500 rallied hard. Wow, look at that. As I said, I expected new all-time highs. I didn't even think they would come this soon. So there you are, especially when the Democrats are doing everything they can to A, print more money, and B, not allow their Federal Reserve, which they fully control, to raise interest rates, which I didn't think that they would. That's about it. Took a look at lumber earlier today. That was interesting. Look at the beautiful MRI. First of all, the MRI calls this low on October 20th, and lumber goes up like 4x, and then it perfectly calls the top, and now it perfectly called the low once again. Let's see how high lumber goes. Yes, the MRI isn't always perfect, even though it has been the last 3 times. The time before that, we continued going high. And that's it. I'm not going to look at any more stocks today. That is it. Lex and myself will be going down to Ensenada, Mexico, August 11th to 15th for Ugly Old Goats, the Bitcoin Standard Conference. Lots of other good speakers there. We got Giacomo Zucco, we got Jimmy Song. And if you guys remember David Poole, I can never pronounce his name right. Kurt, Nut is going to be there as well. So you can go ahead and check that out. I'm going to try to make Giacomo's workshop on nodes because as a pleb, I can use a little bit of help every now and then. My own events are in Dubai. We're going to have Understanding Bitcoin, October 22 to 24, and the Financial Summit, October 6 to 12. All right, Lex, you still with me?
Yeah, dude.
All right, cool. Anything you want to say? Close us out?
No, I think, stand up, guys. Don't make it easier for them when they're pushing this egregious stuff on us. Stand up to it. Self-custody your coins. Get technically proficient. That's what I'd say.
We didn't get a chance to cover the new Lightning nodes from Blockstream. Maybe we'll do it on the next show.
Yeah, let's do that another time. I have a few things to say about that, and I got to rush off right now. So.
Yep, and the article is in the video description. All right, guys. You can follow Lex as Grass-Fed Bitcoin on Twitter.
That's right. All right, guys. Thank
you all so much for watching. Jimmy Song couldn't join, but I'll do it for him. This song is done.
Fiat delenda est.